God answers the prayers of his servants. When my servants ask you about me, I am always near. I answer their prayers when they pray to me. The people shall respond to me and believe in me in order to be guided. Permitted for you is sexual intercourse with your wives during the nights of fasting. They are the keepers of your secrets, and you are the keepers of their secrets. God knew that you used to betray your souls, and he has redeemed you and has pardoned you. Henceforth, you may have intercourse with them, seeking what God has permitted for you. You may eat and drink until the white thread of light becomes distinguishable from the dark thread of night at dawn. Then you shall fast until sunset. Sexual intercourse is prohibited if you decide to retreat to the masjid during the last 10 days of Ramadan. These are God's laws. You shall not transgress them. God thus clarifies his revelations for the people that they may attain salvation.
Any thoughts or comments about the verses?
You know,
There's one thing
I
yeah.
have
interesting. Okay, Katarina.
yeah, I have some shares on 186. When my servants ask you about me, I am always near. I answer their prayers when they pray to me. People shall respond to me and believe in me in order to be. So I was always wondering about this what it means to like, respond to God, right? And I found some verses. So there's Surah 40, verse 60. It says, "Your Lord says, implore me, and I will respond to you." So that's one. Number two, 42:26. Responding to him are those who believe and lead a righteous life. He will shower them with his blessings. As for the disbelievers, they have incurred a severe retribution. So I was just thinking in terms of responding to God. So from what I found so far in the Quran, there's two specific verses that says implore God and He will respond to you, right? So that means making sure you're. I think there's a footnote for this actually. Hold on. Yeah, there is a footnote for it. So it says supplication, imploring God for anything, even material luxuries, is a form of worship. Hence the commandment to implore God whenever we have need. Atheists will never implore God for anything. So this kind of concept is like I think it's in the Bible as well. Ask and you will receive, right? So that's how I kind of see that verse. And in terms of responding to Him are those who believe and lead a righteous life. So obviously that's God tells us in the Quran what it means to be righteous, and yeah, that's the only way you can actually respond to God. Sorry, some of the ways you can respond to
God. Was the first verse 13:14 that you mentioned?
It's 40:60.
30:16.
And then 40:60.
I'd add something to what you stated too is, God says that he answers the prayers. The thing is sometimes the answer he gives isn't the answer we want to hear, one. Two is it happens on God's timing. If we read 17, 10, and 11, those are the verses. Or sorry, 11 and 12. So 11 is the human being often prays for something that may hurt him, thinking that he is praying for something good. The human being is impatient. Then 17:12 gives this example. It says, "We rendered the night and the day two signs. We made the night dark and the day lighted. That you may seek God's provisions from your Lord. This also establishes for you a timing system, a means of calculation. We thus explain everything in detail." That sometimes when we ask for something, God put everything in motion for us to get our answer. We just have to be patient in the sense of when we're going to get our answer. Let's say, for instance, if I'm single and I pray for a spouse, God answered the prayer. The spouse might be in motion. When I'm going to, eventually get that spouse and be introduced and this and that, it's going to happen on God's timing, and God's timing is the best timing. But it's hard for us because we're used to this instant kind of gratification where, if I want something, I should get it now. God knows when it's best to give it to us. So, when we implore Him, when we pray to Him, we must trust that behind the scenes, everything is taken in motion. That maybe God doesn't want us to have this, and He might not, that might be the answer. But other times that it's like, no, God is answering our prayer. We just have to be patient to when we'll actually see the manifestation of it.
That's a really good point, mashallah. Also, I was just wondering, like the part where it says, "The people shall respond to me and believe in me in order to be guided." So that kind of triggered my mind to do a little bit more research on, responding to God, because God is saying here, for you to be guided, you shall respond to Him, right? So, um, I thought that was like quite interesting as well.
Yeah, it's like you can't you don't just believe it. It's just not a conscious belief or understanding. You do it, that kind of thing. Respond, physical thing. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Also, here's the thing. This is a concept. I don't know what to think of it actually. And it's in 2:187. It's you're talking about your spouse. They are the keepers of your secrets, and you are the keepers of their secrets. And this tying this in with vain talk and conspiracies and things like this, gossiping, things like that. I had a discussion one time with another submitter, and he was saying, well, you can gossip with your wife because she's the keeper of your secrets, this kind of a thing. And I just kind of, it took my head in a spin. And so I just wanted to hear what people think of this expression.
I,
Not sure what it means, but definitely I don't think you should be like gossiping with your wife. I mean, we definitely fall into that, I guess, because it's the person that's the closest to you, right? But I still think it's a sin to um to do that. In regards to your actual question, yeah, I mean,
had
it can mean a lot of
a
things, right?
on the previous comment, and then I can. So in 2:3, it says, it's interesting. It says, "Who believe in the unseen, observe the contact press a lot, and from our provisions to them they give to charity." Same thing with 186. "The people shall respond to me and believe in me." I feel like this is showing that we have to put the belief in kind of take action with our belief first before we see the response. Most people, they say, "Oh, you'll believe. You have to see it to believe it." God is saying, "No, you first believe it. You act on those beliefs, then you'll see the response to that." Regarding the husbands and wives, it's this aspect that I feel like there's certain pieces within a relationship that are meant to be not publicly discussed. And when it says that they're keepers of each other's secrets, means that like the intimate um, relationship that a husband and a wife have, this is not something that should be out, discussed with other people. That you have to, in essence, maintain that trust amongst each other.
I agree with you, but in terms of the responding, it says you shall respond, right? Like the believers. So it's not talking about God responding to you, right?
Yeah, yeah. So response I see is in the sense of let's say, for instance, in 2:3, who believe in the unseen, observe the contact purse a lot. Like first, you have to, in essence, believe, and then your actions have to correspond with that belief, and then God reciprocates with His part, rather than saying, okay, well, let me wait until God does His, then I'll do my part.
Mm-mm.
One other comment regarding 187, I thought was interesting. The expression where it says, "These are God's laws; you shall not transgress them." Uh, the Arabic that's used for so there's different words that can be used to convey this point of not transgressing God's laws is taqrabu, which means in essence to come near. So it's one thing to transgress; it's another thing that it's in essence saying don't even come near to these limits. And it's always the case that you want to have a fair amount of a buffer. If I'm next to a pool, if I'm walking on the peripheral and saying, okay, I don't want to get wet, it's like I'm really tempting to get wet at that point. If I keep enough distance, that I'm not even close, then I have nothing to fear about. It makes me think of a lot of these commandments in the Quran. But saying, okay, these are the limits, but for your sake, don't get close to it. And again, that same parable of the forbidden tree in paradise. It's like if you're never within vicinity of it, you're never gonna come near. You're never gonna eat from it. If you're like, hey, let me just hang out in the right around it, likeliness of you falling into that transgression just increase exponentially.
That's a really interesting topic to talk about, is this whole idea of how restrictive should we be in order to be obedient. And then I always think of the pitfall of being so restrictive that you're sinful, that kind of a thing, creating these restrictions that don't exist. And I'd like to hear people's thoughts on that, like this with the intent of being ultra obedient, you may prohibit things that are not prohibited.
I think we each need to know where we have shortcomings and be extra cautious on those. And the ones that, in essence, we say, look, this has no bearing on me. In essence, I feel, less, how do you put it, the word restrictive on. So let's say if I have a known problem with alcohol, it's probably not good for me to go to Vegas. It's probably not good for me to go hang out at the bar with my friends. If I have a problem with gossiping and it predominantly happens around certain people, I'm probably better off to keep my distance from being within vicinity of those people. And I think that that's something that we do, in essence, to be proactive. It's funny, they did this study regarding willpower. They wanted to know those who, in essence, set goals and objectives, what distinguished them from the people who could meet those objectives from the ones who couldn't. Say they wanted to reduce the, some bad habit or overindulgence or something like that. They found that was the ones who supposedly had high willpower were just better at controlling themselves of not putting themselves in situations where they would have to exert their willpower. That was realistically the differentiator between the two groups. Is that the ones who supposedly, scored high on willpower just didn't put themselves in those situations. The ones who scored low on willpower were the ones who were constantly, in essence, knowing they have this shortcoming, they would put themselves in these environments or situations where they would be tempted by it.
Yeah, I think I'm honestly guilty of that. Dude. Like sometimes I have too much overconfidence in what I'm not willing to do and what I am willing to do. And I think yeah, like when God tells you don't come near something, you should not come near something, especially if it's a weakness for you.
One of the simple applications of this is the idea of soy sauce being prohibited because it has a small bit of alcohol in it. And is it better is it just more righteous that, yeah, let's just not eat soy sauce? I mean, it's like, I mean, and I was saying, I was looking at it and justifying it, saying, well, no one goes out and buys soy sauce to get intoxicated. So is it an intoxicant? You know, is it that that it, that kind of rationale? I don't know if that's better or not. Maybe it's better. Maybe it's better. Yeah, not eat soy sauce. But it seems that this is that slippery slope where the restrictions start to become, I don't know,
Yeah, I think this
overbearing,
will.
I wouldn't
self-righteous.
prohibit. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. I think we agree, you and me, on this anyway. Good.
I apologize. My internet keeps cutting out. But yeah, the aspect of prohibiting soy sauce, I wouldn't do that. But I'll tell you something interesting. For people like friends I have that are alcoholics, and I introduced them to 0.0% alcohol, and then also vinegar, basically with sparkling water. And one of the responses was interesting. He says, "I can't have this because it's too similar. Like the brain chemistry is too similar. The concern was if they get comfortable with this, then they'll get back into the desire for alcohol." It didn't even dawn on me, right? In the sense where this is something like for me, I'm like, okay, it's vinegar. It's like a health drink, like apple cider. I didn't make that connection in the sense of someone who has a problem historically with alcohol that this could be a trigger for them. And I think it's different for person to person. But if we say, for instance, yes, vinegar is prohibited, soy sauce is prohibited, then we're starting to make these prohibitions that God never authorized. Again, if you have a problem, again with intoxicants, then tasting that is going to create that reminder, that desire again, that maybe for that person it's better to keep their distance.
Yeah, I agree. It's like a logical argument. Like if nicotine was haram, like, and I give you a nicotine-free cigarette, like that's kind of, you know,
Yeah, you're tempting.
Yeah.
yeah, but I wouldn't prohibit it, right? When it comes to dietary law, I think God was very clear. Like, prohibition is definitely worse than anything else.
Say that again. You think prohibition is worth? Say that again.
It's probably the worst thing you can do when it comes to dietary law is to prohibit something that wasn't specifically prohibited in that
Yeah,
verse.
yeah. That's what I thought too. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, like me personally, I see that there's trace amount of alcohol in a lot of food. Like yogurt, things like that. Like you'll find trace amounts of it in surprising places.